in person, and then we'll go to questions online. Alors, après les remarques de Jagmeet Singh, on va prendre des questions en personne. Ensuite, nous irons en ligne pour prendre vos questions. Alors, Jagmeet Singh, la parole est à vous.
We're speaking with people across the country about housing. And one of the messages that was really clear is that it's really rough right now. No matter where we went, we heard stories from people that could not find a home that they could afford. I remember two stories in particular. One was a couple, both were working decent jobs, earning a decent living. They're in their 40s and they had teenage kids. And both of them, even though they've got a combined decent income, could not afford to stay in the home that they're in because the rent was going up. And they're both having to make a tough decision that they're going to have to move in with their parents. And they're lucky enough to have parents, but it shouldn't be that way. For two people that earn a decent living, they cannot afford to stay in the home that they're renting. The second story that I remember really clearly is a young person, similarly just graduated, has a good job, and lives at home with her parents, but just wants to go out and spread her wings, and there's nothing available. The vacancy rates are so low in this country that people just can't find a place to rent at all, let alone find a place that's affordable. They just can't find anything. That shouldn't be the way things are. Despite the fact that this is one of the major challenges that we're up against, we just saw a 3-day cabinet retreat where the Liberal government, Justin Trudeau, came out of that retreat and had nothing to announce on housing, on one of the most serious things that we're up against. How does that make any sense? We're faced with a housing crisis, and we've got a Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who's busy blaming others, saying it's not his responsibility. We've got a Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to blame cities. New Democrats want to build. I want to build. I want to use the power that we have at the federal level, the resources that we have at the federal level, to build more homes that people can actually afford. That's what I want to do. If we want to have, if the House is going to be called back, or if anyone wants to debate, let's just talk about a plan. Let's not have empty words and blaming others like Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau are doing. Let's talk about solutions. Let's waive the GST and HST to incentivize builders to build homes that people can actually afford. Let's use federal land. Let's have a plan to use federal land to build homes that people can afford. But let's stop wasting our time debating or arguing each other and finding out who to blame, as Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau want to do. Let's focus on building homes that people can afford, as New Democrats want to do, as people expect us to do. Donc, c'est clair qu'on est dans une crise du logement qui frappe fort. Pendant cet été, on a visité plusieurs communautés, on a parlé avec les gens, et ils ont partagé leur histoire. Et l'histoire est claire, les gens ne peuvent pas trouver du logement abordable. C'est presque impossible. Et malgré le fait qu'on a une crise comme ça, le Premier ministre Justin Trudeau essaie de blâmer les autres, essaie de dire que ce n'est pas son responsabilité. Et le chef du Parti conservateur fait la même chose. Il essaie de blâmer les municipalités au lieu de proposer des solutions. Nous, les néo-démocrates, on veut bâtir, on veut construire plus de logements abordables. On va utiliser le pouvoir du gouvernement fédéral pour faire en sorte que les gens peuvent trouver quelque chose qui est abordable. Donc, on va continuer de mettre la pression. On a vu que Justin Trudeau, après 3 journées d'une retraite avec son cabinet, ils ont annoncé rien pour régler ce problème. Et M. Poilievre continue de blâmer les municipalités au lieu de vraiment avoir un plan pour aider les gens. On va continuer d'utiliser notre pouvoir dans ce gouvernement minoritaire pour pousser ce gouvernement d'agir pour bâtir plus de logements abordables pour les gens qui en ont besoin. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Shelley from CTV, what are your thoughts on the recent report, the National Housing Accord?
But what we found again and again is just there's simply not enough housing in our country to meet the needs. And we've got a federal government that's not using the power that it has to do so. The federal government has significant power. And instead of using that power to build more homes that people can afford, we've got a 3-day retreat that just happened. And in face of the serious, one of the biggest problems we're up against as a country, nothing was announced. And so it's very similar with the housing strategy that this Liberal government's put forward, a lot of good words, but we're not seeing homes being built that people can afford. That's what we need. We need to build homes. We need to build them rapidly, build homes that people can actually afford, and let's get to that work.
And follow up, just I think it was during the retreat that the housing minister has finally mentioned immigration, in particular foreign students, that they need to look at possibly putting some holds on that. What is your position on the foreign student issue?
Well, our focus really is on building more homes. Like, we really want to focus on building more homes that people can afford. We mentioned as well, though, for institutions like universities and colleges that have study permits where they bring in students, they should also have a plan in place to house those students. And if they don't have that plan in place, then they shouldn't be receiving permits if they don't have a plan to house the students they're bringing in. So we agree with that notion, but our focus is we've got to build more homes. It shouldn't be about focusing on stopping the flow rather than focus on building more homes. That should be the number one priority. We need to do that more than anything. And then when it comes to permits, study permits should be granted to institutions that have a plan to house the students that they're bringing in. That makes good sense.
Okay, we'll go to City next. You got a question? Can we do it after? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We'll go to CBC Radio-Canada.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
En français, est-ce que vous pouvez me dire qu'est-ce qui ressort de votre rencontre avec David Eby ce matin?
Oui, j'ai rencontré le Premier ministre de la Colombie-Britannique et on a parlé de feux de forêt en particulier. Et j'ai demandé qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour mieux répondre aux ces feux de forêt. Donc, on a parlé de l'importance d'avoir plus de ressources, de fonds pour aider les municipalités d'avoir une meilleure infrastructure pour faire face à ce qui est maintenant normal, le climat extrême. Donc, on a parlé de ça. On essaie de parler du fait qu'au Canada, on n'a pas les ressources nécessaires pour s'attaquer aux feux de forêt et on a besoin d'accueillir plusieurs travailleurs des autres pays quand on est dans une crise. Donc, c'est important aussi d'avoir une force, une équipe nationale pour combattre les feux de forêt. Et on a parlé de ça aussi. En général, le fait qu'on a besoin de plus de coopération ou plus de travail ensemble entre les provinces et le gouvernement fédéral pour avoir une réponse nécessaire dans des cas de climat extrême, parce que c'est maintenant plus en plus normal. Dans le passé, c'était quelque chose qui se passe pas souvent, mais maintenant, vraiment souvent, on a des catastrophes à travers le pays chaque été. Et ce n'est pas seulement les feux de forêt, aussi les inondations. Donc, on doit agir comme c'est normal, avec un plan et une approche plus forte.
Et qu'est-ce que vous pensez de la gestion qui a été faite des feux de forêt là, cette saison?
Je sais que c'est un travail immense et tellement difficile. Donc, je veux reconnaître le travail de tous les travailleurs de première ligne, les pompiers, tous les gens qui travaillent pour faire face à ces feux de forêt. Je sais que c'est difficile. Je pense qu'après, on va avoir une analyse sur c'était quoi la réaction, est-ce qu'il y a une meilleure façon de répondre. Mais je veux reconnaître le travail du gouvernement, des travailleurs. C'est vraiment un travail difficile et je veux reconnaître le travail acharné. Pour le futur, ce qui est clair, on a besoin de plus de ressources et un plan plus fort pour répondre plus rapidement dans une manière nationale, pour aider dans une manière plus rapide, parce que c'est vraiment une situation qui est devenue normale maintenant.
Any other questions in the room? No? Okay, then we'll go to our Zoom.
Thank you very much. Alors, juste un rappel aux médias sur Zoom d'utiliser la fonction lever la main pour poser une question et une question de suivi. Just a reminder for media on Zoom to please use the raise hand function for a question and a follow-up. Nous allons commencer avec Valérie Gamache avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Je voulais je voulais vous parler des seuils, du plafonnement des seuils des étudiants étrangers. Ça a été évoqué beaucoup pendant la retraite du premier ministre avec ses ministres à l'île du Prince-Édouard. Est-ce que pour vous, ça peut faire partie du bouquet de solutions à la crise du logement?
Il y a quelques semaines, on a annoncé notre plan, ce qui est de ça. Premièrement, je pense que c'est une faillite qu'après 3 jours d'une retraite avec le cabinet fédéral, que la seule chose qui était déclenchée, c'est le fait qu'ils vont réduire peut-être le seuil d'immigration. Ça, c'est la réponse dans un cas où il y a un grand manque de logement à travers le pays, où les gens ne peuvent pas trouver du logement abordable. Les gens avec des bons salaires ne peuvent pas trouver quelque chose. Les jeunes personnes disent qu'il n'y a aucune option pour eux. Et la seule réponse du gouvernement fédéral, c'est de dire qu'on va réduire les seuils d'immigration. Ça, c'est une faillite. On a annoncé que pour une université, une collège, s'il veut accepter des étudiants étrangers, ces institutions doivent avoir un plan pour du logement pour ces étudiants. Sinon, on ne doit pas les donner des permis. Donc, ça, c'est une approche qu'on a dit, mais c'est vraiment une faillite. Ils ont manqué le coup. Si leur seule réponse après 3 journées pour répondre à un enjeu aussi immense comme la crise du logement, ça, c'est leur réponse du gouvernement libéral. C'est insuffisant.
Et qu'est-ce que vous pensez du fait de l'évocation de certains ministres libéraux de peut-être revoir aussi le seuil d'immigration en général? Est-ce que ça vous a étonné de voir des ministres libéraux remettre ça en question?
Encore, mon approche, c'est on doit bâtir, on doit construire plus de logements. Ça, c'est la réponse nécessaire pour cette crise du logement. Et c'est clair qu'il y a un manque de logement à travers le pays. Dans chaque coin de ce pays, il n'y a pas le logement nécessaire pour les gens. Donc, on doit construire plus de logements. Ça, c'est notre plan, d'encourager plus de construction, utiliser le pouvoir fédéral pour promouvoir plus de construction. Ça, c'est ce qu'on doit faire. J'ai parlé spécifiquement d'un cas avec les institutions éducationnelles qu'ils doivent avoir un plan pour accueillir les étudiants. Oui, c'est quelque chose qu'on a proposé, mais notre focus, c'est vraiment de construire plus de logements.
We will now go to Raisa Patel with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. The Prime Minister's cabinet retreat, as you've mentioned, was meant to focus heavily on housing, but it didn't seem to actually result in any new decisions on what to do about the housing crisis. So what does that tell you about how the Liberals are tackling this issue, and what exactly would you have wanted to see come out of this week?
The fact that the Liberal government had a 3-day retreat, a cabinet retreat with the Prime Minister, and out of that 3-day retreat, they have no plan to address one of the major challenges we're facing as a country, shows a complete failure of leadership. What else could it be? They have failed. This is the biggest challenge we're up against as a country. We're hearing from people across the country that people can't find housing. People with good incomes can't find housing. People with lower incomes, of course, are extremely challenged. And this government has nothing to say in terms of a plan. We put out clear plans. Let's free up federal land and use it to build more homes. Let's incentivize the building of homes that are truly affordable for people. Let's use the power that we have as a nation and build rapidly and immediately the homes that people need. Let's do that. Instead, they come out with no plan. And what I expected was that the Prime Minister would hear from people, as I have throughout the summer, that we need housing, we need it quickly. And instead, we got a complete failure of leadership to not show they understand what's going on, nor do they have a plan to respond to what's going on.
I wanted to change tracks a little bit and ask you a bit about your travel itinerary over the past week. You know, you've been to Edmonton, Saskatchewan, you're in BC. These are all partly conservative regions. Do you want to make gains in conservative territory?
We want to make gains across this country, and we are seeing very clearly that in a time that people have been struggling, New Democrats have delivered. We've seen conservatives make a lot of noise on the sidelines, make noise, but not offer anything to make people's lives better and not show anything concretely. We've lowered, we've concretely helped people out by putting money back in people's pockets with the GST rebate. We have brought in dental care for kids under 12. We have improved work conditions for workers by bringing in 10 paid days of sick leave at the national level. We've shown results. We're giving people a break. We're giving people some help. But we're only 25 of us. Imagine there was more of us. The official opposition of this country, 100 plus seats with the Conservatives, what can they show in 2 minority governments that they led the way to make people's lives better in any concrete way? They haven't. And so we're targeting areas where we're showing Canadians that, yeah, we've had your back. We were in Edmonton, and in one of the ridings in Edmonton Manning, over 2,000 kids received the dental care, the benefit of kids under 12. Over 2,000 kids got that benefit. And the member of parliament, a Conservative in that riding, voted against it, even though he has free dental care, even though the leader of the Conservative Party has had publicly paid for free dental care since his 20s. He voted against kids getting dental care. He voted against seniors getting dental care. So it's okay for him to get public free dental care, but it's not okay for kids to get it, for seniors to get it. These are questions that we're going to put to people in those ridings and say, you Democrats have had your back. We'll continue to have your back. We've got a Liberal government that's out of touch. We've got a Conservative government that's voting against your interests, and New Democrats who are fighting for you.
We will now go to Olivia Stefanovich with CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Do you agree with Pierre Poilievre that the Prime Minister should call back the House of Commons to deal with the housing crisis?
I'm ready to talk about the housing crisis any day. We can do that at any time, but I don't want to see the Conservative leader do what he's been doing for the past, I don't know how many months, just blaming others. That's not going to build more housing. Pierre Poilievre has been focused on blaming municipalities. The Prime Minister has been focused on blaming others, saying it's not his responsibility. New Democrats have been focused on saying we should be building homes. So if we go back to the House, we're ready to do that at any time. But let's talk about a real plan. A plan to waive the GST and HST to incentivize building homes that are affordable. A plan to use federal land. An actual plan. Let's talk about what the plan is. Not just talk about blaming others as Pierre Poilievre has done, as Trudeau has done. Let's focus on actual deliverables. Let's have a plan and let's use Parliament to put that plan in motion. That's what I want to do.
As a follow-up, I'd just like to bring up another subject. Your former NDP MP, Romeo Saganash, has been charged with sexual assault. I'd just like to know if you can comment on that and if you can confirm if he has any affiliation with your party at this time.
Well, he's a former NDP MP and has no current affiliation with the party in a formal capacity beyond being a former MP. And matters before the court, I have no comment to address those matters that are before the court right now.
Nous allons maintenant à Sandrine Vieira avec Le Devoir. C'est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh. J'aimerais vous entendre en français sur la demande de Monsieur Poilievre de revenir en Chambre dès demain. Est-ce que vous seriez prêt à revenir 3 semaines plus tôt?
On est prêt de faire le travail n'importe quand, mais je ne veux pas avoir une situation où M. Poilievre veut continuer de blâmer les autres, parce que ça ne règle pas le problème. Ce qu'on a entendu depuis longtemps de M. Poilievre, d'essayer de blâmer les municipalités, blâmer quelqu'un. On a entendu la même chose du Premier ministre, M. Trudeau, blâmer les autres en disant que ce n'est pas le travail du gouvernement fédéral de régler la crise du logement. De notre part, on veut construire plus de logements, on veut utiliser le pouvoir du gouvernement fédéral pour aider les gens. On ne veut pas avoir des débats entre qui on doit blâmer. Ce qu'on veut faire, c'est de faire le travail. Donc, si on veut avoir, on va utiliser les chambres de commun pour faire passer un projet de loi pour enlever les TPS, pour encourager la construction du logement abordable, oui, faites-le. Si c'est la question d'avoir un plan concret pour utiliser le terrain fédéral pour bâtir plus de logements abordables, oui, on est prêt de faire ça. Mais on n'est pas prêt d'avoir un débat entre qui on doit blâmer comme M. Trudeau et M. Poilievre ont fait depuis longtemps. Notre but, c'est d'utiliser le pouvoir du gouvernement fédéral pour avoir des résultats et des décisions concrètes.
Mhm. Dans un récent sondage, les conservateurs de Pierre Poilievre mènent, surtout auprès des jeunes et des milléniaux. Savez-vous pourquoi?
De ce qu'on a vu, c'est le fait que les conservateurs n'ont vraiment pas un plan pour régler les problèmes de monsieur, madame, tout le monde. Et on a vu ce qu'ils font quand ils sont au pouvoir. On a des exemples. En Ontario, le plan pour construire plus de logements, c'est d'aider leurs amis milliardaires. Et maintenant, on a une poursuite potentielle de la GRC pour suivre ce qui s'est passé en Ontario. On a vu dans les autres provinces conservateurs que les gouvernements conservateurs coupent les services, fait mal aux gens. Donc, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui va aider les jeunes ni l'autre partie de la population. Notre plan, c'est de bâtir plus de logements abordables, aider les gens, et on va continuer de montrer notre plan et faire le contraste avec les conservateurs et les libéraux qui ont eu ils ont déjà eu du temps et ils ont montré avec leur bilan ce qu'ils ont fait, ce qui est pour le logement, rien.
We will now go to Mary P. Brooke with Island Social Trends. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. So on the housing, you're saying build more. I'm sure everyone agrees with that. But I'm wondering what your perspective is on the costs behind that. More cost for materials and land. The labor is not only costly, but sometimes not available. And there are municipal bottlenecks like across the country at different cities. So that's part one of my question. The other part is, what are your suggestions for solutions? You've mentioned dropping the GST and using federal land. But I'm wondering about a paradigm shift to people's expectations about having smaller homes, less ostentatious homes, first out of the gate as their first home. In Canada, it's kind of like either you own a house or it's, you're not there yet. So what about that shift? Do you think the NDP can start to encourage people to be more modest in their expectations?
I'll start with the second question. I'll go to the first. What I want to see a shift in the way the market is working. Right now, the housing market works very well for rich developers, for rich investors, and it does not work for everyday families. That's a shift I want to make. It should not be that the housing market in our country, designed by liberals and conservatives, benefits those at the very top but hurts everyone else. That is a clear plan. That is the way the housing market has been designed, and it is hurting people. So I want to change that. We've got to address the fact that people are using the housing market like a casino, like a stock market, dropping money into it, hoping that it's going to go up in value, and it does go up in value. That's why we see significant foreign investment, because they know that there's a lot of money to be made here. We've got to change that and make housing about people being able to find a home, not about rich investors trying to make more money. That's the change we need to make, and that's the shift I want to see happen. And in terms of how we build more homes, well, that's a part of it, changing the way the market is structured. So it's about giving people a home rather than making rich investors even richer. That's just an unsustainable approach. And so some of the concrete things we've said, we can incentivize building homes that are affordable. We've talked about an acquisition fund to keep homes that are affordable in the hands of the community. An acquisition fund like BC has done, we could do that nationally, which is to allow community groups to keep homes owned by the community, owned by a community not-for-profit, or turn apartments into cooperatives so the people there who live there are able to keep the cost of housing down. We can build homes that are purposely built with the goal of making it affordable, not with the goal of making rich investors richer. Let's build homes where the goal is, let's make these homes actually affordable for everyone, for young people so they can have a bright future, for seniors who are living on a fixed income, for everyday families earning good incomes but can't find a home. Let's build homes that they can actually afford. And we can do that. We can work together. Instead of blaming others like Trudeau and the Conservatives like to do, the Poilievre Conservatives like to do, let's actually build homes that people can afford and use the power that we have to work together to achieve that instead of blaming others.
On that. And on the BC wildfires, you've met with Premier Eby today on that. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the overall emergency response federal, provincial combined, and any other specifics you might have.
Certainly, I want to thank everyone, all the hardworking frontline responders, the firefighters, both local and international. Thank everybody that's been involved, all the emergency teams. This has been really, really difficult. It's been a really difficult season. And we all saw those really terrifying images coming out of the interior BC, coming out of different communities. It's been a really tough time. It's a really hard job, and a lot of people are working hard, and I want to acknowledge the hard work that everyone's put into it. I'm sure after the fact, there'll be a time to assess ways that we can improve our response. But right now, I just want to thank everyone for the hard work and focus on what we can do, not just in the immediate term right now, but in the next phases, how we can help people with rebuilding their homes, how we can support people in this time. We know that there are a lot of people that have been evacuated, making sure they can get back to their communities safely and soundly when it's appropriate to do that. There's a lot of work that still remains, and we'll be pushing to make sure that work is done.
We have time for one last question. So we have John Woodside with the National Observer. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask about the fires as well. We're hearing more calls for a national firefighting agency. Specifically, there's a demand to have 50,000 people, like an agency of that size. I'm just wondering what your view on that is, a national firefighting agency. Is this something the federal government should establish? And if so, will the NDP push for one?
In fact, yes, we actually called for one a number of months ago and said that at the federal level, what is becoming really clear, well, just at a national level, what's becoming really clear is we don't have the resources to respond to the disasters that we're up against. We've been relying on international firefighters for a long time now, often from different countries like South Africa. We welcome those firefighters and we thank them, but it's become clear that we're not able to respond to the crises that we're up against on our own because we don't have enough resources allocated. And sadly, it's becoming more and more common. So it's not a one-off thing where we need to scramble and get people to help us out. It's becoming more and more of a common occurrence. And that being the case, we called for a federal firefighting force, that we need to have a firefighting force that's properly equipped, properly trained, and can be deployed wherever needed. Because we know that sometimes a crisis can happen in our province here in BC, but it could be also in Atlantic provinces like we saw with Nova Scotia. So we need that federal force. We need it to be well equipped with the right equipment and training to respond and to be deployed across the country. We also heard this from my meeting today with Premier Eby, but also from other leaders in other communities. We need a better national focus on emergency teams. Often we ask smaller communities that have not the experience or the capacity to somehow manage the evacuation of thousands of people or come up with an emergency plan to deal with a crisis on the spot. We need a national approach to that, a team that could be going throughout the year and coordinating with different communities to make sure that we can deploy very quickly when there is an emergency, instead of having nothing in place and then quickly trying to find a team and build that team in the last moment. So that's something that we also are calling for. So a firefighting force, as well as an emergency team that can be ready year round to deploy the resources necessary, and a firefighting team that can be ready to be deployed across the country when the need arises. That can help us catch fires quicker and earlier, which is easier to contain when we catch them earlier. And so it's something that we absolutely need to do. I should ask one last piece. We also know there's a problem around procurement of the resources necessary. Provinces are not in the best position to procure those resources, whether it's the gel or the foam that's used to keep homes from catching fire, or the water bombers and the other infrastructure. The federal government's in a better position to acquire that infrastructure, that equipment, and then to use that and deploy it where needed across the country. I think is a better way to do it. So that's another piece I think we need to look at very seriously.
Great, thanks. And just as a follow-up, just to pick up on that, I was also curious about whether you could expand a little on how to mobilize resources there, because I'm going to single Alberta out, but I mean, this is something we're seeing with many provinces. But Alberta cut firefighting budgets. They dismantled training programs, decommissioned watchtowers, and so there's clearly this need for more resources to get the ongoing fires under control. But there's also a question around how to be proactive about this, and especially in this confederation of ours. if you have any further thoughts on the federal government's role in being proactive, that'd be appreciated.
Well, I mean, I think like a province like Alberta with a conservative government cutting the necessary resources was a bad decision, and don't want to take away from that. That was a wrong thing to do. But that does highlight the importance of having a national approach where we can have the resources ready, funded, and equipped and trained and ready to be deployed, and also on the ground, making sure that we've got resources necessary to monitor and watch fires, catch them early, respond quickly. These are things that we need to do, and I think we can do a far better job of coordinating those resources if we've got a national approach to it, given that there may not be a crisis in every province all throughout the year, but more and more, sadly, it seems like there's a crisis across the country year-round, and having a team ready to be deployed quickly, rapidly, to make sure that people get the help they need and that we can catch things early would be the right thing to do.
We have no more questions online. Nous n'avons plus de questions en ligne. Alors, je vais le relancer à Jagmeet pour conclusion. I will throw it back to you, Jagmeet, for closing remarks.
Thanks so much. I just want to say again, a big thank you to everyone that's attended today. In closing, our message is very clear. We are frankly fed up with the Liberal government and Justin Trudeau trying to blame others and say it's not his fault. We're fed up with the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, trying to blame others. We think the job of the federal government is to work together and get things done. New Democrats want to build more homes that are affordable and find ways to work together with all levels of government to achieve that. That's what Canadians expect of us, and that's what we're going to do. Thanks. Merci.